We are going live on YouTube.
Let's get the recording going as well.
Hello, everyone. We at ASCI welcome you and hope that you are staying safe and that the well-being of your family is of a great concern to you. So we are wishing that everybody is happy and fine. Fall is almost here, and the colors of fall and the way the universe has designed it, we thought we'll bring the design summit session for you right in time for the season. So before we tread on this journey, let me do a few talk about a few housekeeping tips so that we can all be comfortable in our journey onwards. The first one is that this is a Zoom meeting. We are recording this Zoom meeting and we are also live on YouTube. We are also presenting this simultaneously on Clubhouse. So in case you want to join over there or YouTube, you are welcome to do so. But Zoom session is always a live one. So we want your presence here as well. For our YouTube channel, please subscribe it so that you get our updates. And then you can be all updated with ASCI events. A little about ASCI. ASCI was established in 1983, and it's a society of American Indian engineers. But we are a very inclusive society, so it's all of South Asians as well, and as well as anybody that we can get to. So if you want to become a member, do so as soon as possible so that you enjoy the journey along with us. Okay, again, coming back to the housekeeping tips, we will have everybody muted. So don't try to unmute yourself. Let's go through the presentation, and at the end of it, we will engage in question answers with our speakers. So please bear with us till then. Meanwhile, you can always use the chat session to write your questions in and get the answers. Today, we thank our sponsor, O'Reilly, and we also announce that the most engaged person, like whoever's writing questions in the chat, etc., will be awarded the book written by our one of our speakers, Noah, and about visualization. Let me just check. So sorry about that, but it's the topic is visualization design as the name of the book, and you will be awarded with that. So go ahead and put in your questions in the chat box. Handing it over to our very own National ASCI President, Piyush Malik. Let's begin. Over to you, Piyush.
Thank you, Vatsala. Good morning, everyone, and good evening if you are coming from India, or good afternoon, wherever else you are coming from. So this is truly a global audience, and this is a global summit for folks who are interested in design. Now, before we begin, I have to tell you a story. This week, 10 years ago, we lost an individual who was known for his Midas touch with design. I think you all can guess who he was. And given we are doing this design summit today, so let's start with a tribute to Steve Jobs, someone who did not have an engineering degree, but he had so many inventions and patents to his credit. And with his design of his products that literally disrupted 3 full industries: computing, music, and telecom. With that, let me share my screen, and we will go from there, hopefully without a glitch.
When you grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside the world, try not to bash into the walls too much. But life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it, you can influence it, you can build your own things that other people can use. Good evening. I'm Steve Jobs from Apple Computer. We're very glad to be here tonight. I think you always had to be a little different to buy an Apple computer. And I think you still have to think differently to buy an Apple computer. And I think the people that do buy them, they are the people that are not just out to get a job done, they're out to change the world. What a computer is to me is, it's the most remarkable tool that we've ever come up with. And it's the equivalent of a bicycle for our minds. This is iMac. The whole thing is translucent. You can see into it. It's so cool. Pleased to announce today that I'm going to drop the interim title.
We used to stand at the intersection of technology and humanity, and to make something for people that want to bring this into their lives and use it for things that make them more creative, not just make them more productive.
This amazing little device holds 1,000 songs, and it goes right in my pocket. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? And we are calling it iPhone. We have a chance, if we stay focused and choose wisely, to really continue to impact people's lives in some small way for the better. There's an old Wayne Gretzky quote that I love. I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. And we've always tried to do that at Apple, since the very, very beginning. And we always will. So thank you very, very much for being part of this.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that tribute to the design maestro, Steve Jobs, let's march forward on our session here. My background as an engineer turned management consultant turned startup executive, where my day job is to help clients digitally transform their organizations with data, analytics, cloud, AI, ML, and other emerging technologies, gives me a vantage point where I can see what's the importance of design. Because while doing so, I need to really ensure that we design and develop usable and meaningful experiences for our clients, as we re-engineer their business processes, enable their folks, their employees, and deploy technologies to solve their burning issues and put them on the path to not only survive, but thrive amidst chaos. Now, one of the primary things that come to the forefront in application design is user interface and user experience design, and it has a key role to play in customer experience management. Let me see if I can proceed with this presentation a bit further. And it is giving me a glitch here. So let's see now. Hopefully it will proceed. So as the topic I will be talking about is design is key to the future. And I'll be throwing some light on design thinking. Today, I'll cover three things: quotes, design thinking, and skills of tomorrow. First quote, design quote number one is from Steve Jobs. Design is not just what it looks like and feels like, design is how it works. Second, we all know who Steve Jobs is, we saw his tribute. Second quote is from Paul Rand. Paul Rand was the graphic designer known for some of the iconic brands you are seeing on the screen, whether it is the logo of IBM or UPS or so many other companies that he did the logo and branding for. What he said was, design can be art, design can be aesthetics. Design is so simple, that's why it's so complicated. Very profound. The third quote I want to share with you is by Tim Brown, who's the CEO and president of IDEO, one of the foremost companies known for ideation, innovation, and design in its heydays. And he said that when he was CEO and president of the company, but right now he's the chairman. He said, where you innovate, how you innovate, and what you innovate are design problems. So essentially, we know all the leaders, and these are just a sampling of three quotes, but they establish the discipline of design and the importance of design. Hopefully, it's very loud and clear. Moving on to design thinking. Now, design thinking is a business methodology, I would say, in terms of solving your customers' problems, or to design or to come up with new products. Design thinking is a perfect way. And first I heard of design thinking was being shepherded by IDEO, and the quote you saw from Tim Brown. And what we saw there was a intersection of desirability, viability, and feasibility. And at the intersection of that lies the product that needs to be designed, the process that needs to be re-engineered. And there are various ways, there are various steps involved in that. You frame a question, you gather inspiration, you generate ideas, you make ideas tangible, you test to learn and share the story. Simple, 6-step process. But even though I said them in a linear fashion, in practical life, when we are implementing systems, when we are designing systems, they don't occur in linear fashion. You have to do a lot of crosswalking. That's why you see some of the zigzags on the screen. The next brush with design thinking was when I attended a program at Stanford's D School. It's also called the Hasso-Plattner School, funded by SAP's chairman, Hasso. And from that, basically, that design thinking process started going into corporates. Away from the niche agencies, it started becoming mainstream. Companies like SAP and IBM and Infosys, took a massive program to teach design thinking to their entire set of staff, sometimes up to 500,000 people. And it took them to understand what it means, and in using this procedure, using this process, they were able to solve their end clients' problems a lot faster, more efficiently, and with profitability. The next brush that I had was the way I think of design thinking is using those post-its and gathering requirements with sitting with your teams. It's all very common. And then, using empathy and using what somebody feels, what they are thinking, and having all these inputs gathered together and clubbed together and classified together. That's how I learned design thinking and got certified at IBM. Now, why am I sharing these things? Because the terminology is there, the prevalence is there in the industry, but common understanding is still missing, and that's something which I feel needs to be propagated. And today, I feel we are at a point that we can easily say, with whatever my experience and whatever my peers and rest of the panel here today will be hearing from, they will either agree with me or they will refute. And we will discuss that during the panel discussion portion. Data storytelling is very important. Visual arts are also very important, and that's where you will see the importance of graphics, graphic designers in this entire skill of tomorrow. And then rapid prototyping. In Silicon Valley, they say fail fast. Definitely true in the startup world. And after my 25 years of corporate life with big name management consulting firms and big tech companies, and serving Fortune 500 clients around the world, I have seen that fail fast is not adopted in corporates, but in the smaller, nimble startups, this is a mantra by which they live by. And design thinking lets us adopt all of these three skills of tomorrow, which are definitely human-centric. So with that, I'll pause my comments. But at the same time, I want to introduce what is going to happen now. We are going to be talking next with our speakers. So following me would be a keynote by Dr. Sanjay Gupta. He is the Vice Chancellor and founder at World University of Design, coming straight from New Delhi, India. And thank you very much for doing this at late night, your time, Dr. Gupta. After that, we will get to our other speakers, Dolly Parrik, who is the CEO of Loki Design, followed by Noah Elinsky, author and UX architect at Calibra. Then followed by other speakers, Chess, John, Sabira, and then Shrinali. Each of them bring in a special, unique skill set. And the last section would be a simulation of how a candidate, or rather a real life enactment of how somebody who is new to the field would prepare their portfolio. And then we will have live comments from two of our experts, and then we'll get into Q&A with the rest of the audience. Meanwhile, keep sharing your questions via the chat panel, and we will get to it. So before I introduce Dr. Gupta, here is a video.
We are looking for talent. The hottest tech companies have hundreds of thousands of positions that
The idea of World University of Design was born 3.5 years back when I had having already spent more than 2 decades in design education, felt that in our country, all the creative streams were existing in their own silos. So we had architecture colleges which are completely different. We have design institutes, even the premium ones like NID or NIFTs, who are existing in a small, inward-looking existence in their own silos without any interaction. Whereas all the creative colleges, streams have a lot of synergy which comes together. And this idea was in my mind that we must be able to bring them together so that the synergy then defines the new age designers which will come out. And that's how I came to discuss this with Mr. Vijayant Bansal, who is the promoter of this project, India's first and only University of Design, about a year back. That's how World University of Design came into being.
My name is Divin Rawal. I'm pursuing product designing from World University of Design. We got some sponsor project. Faculty are very good, like all the faculties are from IIT or NID. That is in top 50 universities of the world.
All our courses have a spine of design thinking, of core competencies.
Guys, we
try
will
to build
admit
in
the speakers
programs
first, and we'll
are not
open up to the
available in
audience
country
Q&A
right now,
after
but
some time.
which would be very,
So
very
till then,
relevant.
this thing is
Like,
going
for
on.
example, one is
Sanjay Gupta.
strategy and design management. We offer both undergraduate and postgraduate programs in this. This is not a typical management program. It's a management program with a design thinking backbone.
Hi, I'm Mani Singh. I'm from World University of Design, WSPA, World School of Planning and Architecture. I'm third year student. We have to do case studies, visits, then we prompt our ideas from the previous planning structures regarding different circulation spaces, and then we choose one of our architect, main architect, best architect, like I have chosen Charles Collier as my inspiration.
We understand that in future, all progressive industries are going to be design-based. And designers are not managers. Their way of thinking, their way of working is very different. They're sensitive people, right? They're creative people. And in future, if you are going to manage a workforce of designers, then you need people who can understand design. We, of course, have tie-ups. I already have 10 tie-ups. France, in Italy, we already have over 30 tie-ups with design studios in the country.
Hi, my name is Brenda Malik. I'm third year fashion student. This college is a pioneer in itself in terms of how it has accommodated, how it has collaborated architectural and design functionalities together.
We have all these clubs and activities happening. We have a fest, which even in its first year managed to attract almost 15 colleges from Delhi universities, another 10 colleges of design from across the country.
So like after 5, we are just done with our classes, and this is like our hangout place. So we just chill out here, we hang out with our friends, we talk about our ideas, share ideas. So this is like an inspirational place. We can brainstorm. It's quite refreshing after our board classes. So yeah, it is really amazing around here.
As part of our experiential learning, students designing to music. So you have a class of 100 people listening to music blaring at high volume and designing, totally engaged, totally absorbed into the music. We have a very happy campus.
All right. Let us now give a very warm welcome to
94% of people believe company
Dr.
culture
Gupta.
is important to an
There is
organization's
something
success.
going on here.
Frankly, I have no idea what the other 6% are thinking. You know, usually when people look up
coming back on track, let me introduce Dr. Sanjay Gupta. He is the Vice Chancellor of World University of Design from NCR, India. He is an alumnus of IIT Delhi, where I'm from as well. And I'm Ahmedabad, which Ahmedabad was the place where I had my first job. Dr. Gupta has had a distinguished academic career of more than 3 decades, and that includes stints at IIT, NIFT, and Bharati Group. His most significant contribution has been in establishing design as a mainstream field of study and career choice in India. He has led the movement of design into university education when he founded the World University of Design a few years ago. And that's the first design-focused university in India offering art, architecture, and design programs under the same roof. It's a reference point now for scores of universities across India introducing design in their course offerings. And I hope the presentation that next follows is intriguing enough that it'll inspire some questions. So with that, a very warm welcome, Dr. Gupta, Professor Gupta, please take over. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Piyush. A very good morning to all of you there in California. Give me a minute while I share my screen.
And I have to tell you that there are not only folks from California, but Michigan and Dallas and all over US. And in fact, on Clubhouse, we are all international, and there are folks from all over the world, actually, Eastern Europe as well. I can see Casey from Far East place there, even though her location says San Diego. And there are a bunch of folks on Clubhouse. We'll get to them in a moment, but please go ahead. You are sharing your screen now.
So let me say good morning and good afternoon. So it was a pleasure. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Piyush, for bringing me here and being in touch with these people all over US and other places. Yes, so it's interesting to talk about design for engineering professions, because ever since I was in IIT trying to become an engineer, my aim was, or what I desired at that point in time, that we should be able to bring design into engineering education, because we often come up with a lot of ideas, but if you are not creative enough, or even if you're creative but you don't know how to go about doing things, you somehow get limited. And if you have an introduction to design while you're doing engineering, the pathway to innovation becomes easier, and you know the process to go around. So anyway, let me, the video you have just seen has already given you an introduction, but I'll just briefly show you some slides. This is a snapshot of university. It's a very young university, just 3 years old, but we have still 30-year academic programs and about 750 students odd. And they're coming from all over: science, arts, commerce, engineering, and other places to study design. In these 3 years only, we have been much rewarded and awarded. The university has been well recognized as one of the most upcoming and emerging universities of the country. This is just some of those. This is my campus. You have a look. These are the programs of study. Out of the 30 programs I listed, now if you see those which have been highlighted in red, are those who accept engineering students. So at undergraduate level, I have product design, and I have a very interesting computer science and design program, which kind of bridge the two parallel running or non-compatible, so-called non-compatible fields of study. And at postgraduate level, I have industrial design, UX and interaction design, interior architecture and design, and transportation design. So this is how some of these are there. But at the same time, we have graphics, communication, animation, gaming, film, video, fashion, and everything else. So the whole concept of the university of what university design is that, let's not work in isolation. Let's work in synergy. All creative streams have common things running across. They work in various domains. For example, if you take the topic of today, UX and interaction design, it's not one field. It works in fashion, it works in architecture, and it works in graphics, communication, retail, you name it. It's working across. So if you have everything like that, then why segregate? Why create silos? So that's the point. These are some of my laboratories. You've seen already some of them in the video. My faculty, a mix of young and old. We get frequently visitors from abroad. These are some of my partner universities in US, Europe, and Latin America and everywhere else. We are part of Desino, which is a Erasmus funding program. We are part of many industry associations, including now ASEI, because we just had a talk with Piyush, trying to become a university partner with ASEI. International collaborations also exist in terms of these bodies, which are design bodies. Speculative Future is US-based. Incidentally, we at WUB try to keep abreast with whatever is happening in technology, from AI to NFTs, and how they link to design is what we're trying to bring it. It's very important that the designers who are coming out of our portals, maybe next year or maybe in 4 years' time, they are going to have a digital future ahead of them. So it's important that they are well versed with anything and any new technology which is coming in, which is digital and which is going to define their future. So that's happening. So coming back to the topic of today, UI and design. You see, interestingly, both the terms user experience and user interface has the word user into them, right? And user is centric to design thinking, or as we call as the human-centered design, which we all try to practice whenever or wherever institution we practice design. So that's our thinking at WUB also. And what we also, there was a time, I'm going back just a few years old, not even a decade, whenever you talked about UI, UX, you used to think that it's only the computer screen which you're talking about, right? The screen expanded from, just the computer. It went on to the mobile and then to thousands of screens on your gadgets which are connected through IoTs. So today we are talking about a few billion smartphones and a few trillion IoT devices, all connected to this user interface. And the experience which you derive from there is defined by the UX people who are working there, right? And everybody's trying to create an experience where you can move from one gadget to another in a seamless way. And that's where the design sort of comes in. What is changing right now is that UI UX is now becoming multi-platform. From command-based, it's going to become now non-command based. So that's where the AR is going to come in a very big way. We already had voice assistants. They came in a few years back. We already have unified the UX with them. But augmented reality is really where the new experience is going to lie. And this is already something which we are experiencing. Fortunately, we have animation and gaming and video and everything. So virtual reality and augmented reality is something which is embedded across streams. For example, in fashion, already you must be seeing this is an AR mirror where you just scan yourself and then you can try on all the garments in the store just on the mirror, or you can just scan yourself on your mobile anywhere and use the e-commerce sites and wear all these garments and try them on how you look or how they fit. Fit is the next big thing, because you can look nice, but if the garment doesn't fit, then it's not going to be the right. So the size and fit is the next frontier which is coming. And fashion is not limited to garment, it's expanding elsewhere on cosmetics, on hairs, on everything else. The applications are expanding there. In architecture and interior design also, whether it is taking measurements of a plot, of an empty shell, of a room, everything is being done. How do you see how the plan would look like, or if you want to have a walkthrough, or if you want to see how a piece of furniture is going to look like, or the wall paint, or the wallpaper, or a pot of plant, or how it's going to fit in your thing. I think augmented reality is helping all that. And that's where our students right now is working. In fact, it's going to be, the experience part of it is taking it further. So it's not just a walkthrough to a house. If you want to see how the sunlight is going to come in throughout the day, and how the mornings are going to look like, and how the afternoons would look like, and which is in your study, which part you can put your lounge and sit down to read a novel, that's also part of now walking. So it's all expanding there, in all these areas. Tourism is again something which is expanding and exploding rather, because it's just one, but there are hundreds of applications which are coming in. So this is what we have trying to build at our university. The idea is that our UX program, which is a master's program, where the incoming students are engineers primarily, but they can come from other field, what they study, and in a unified way, how they can interact with the rest of the departments, with the rest of the technologies, and try to build something is something which we are doing there. These are some of the contents. I just put it there so that if there is any keyword which you look at, or these are the capabilities which we are trying to bring, right from research to wireframing, prototyping, using your empathy to generate, exact data from the people you are going to interview, from your designee, as we call them, the questionnaire building, card sorting, information architecture, all of these things is something which we are trying to see that our students get adapted at. Some of the softwares which they will be using is this. So that's all I think I have to say today. My intention on coming here was to connect with ASEI. I think you have one of a very rich network of engineers who are working in this area. And as an institution, we are looking at collaborating with all of you. If you are as experts who can come into lecture or guide students, or maybe if we think we can do something together as projects or internships or placements, I'm just open here and trying to work with these people. So I just want to thank ASI for giving me this opportunity of connecting with you. Over to you, Piyush.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta. This is amazing. The presentation definitely showcases what all you have achieved in the last short time of 3 years. And there are lots and lots of questions that are pouring in, both directly as well as to the folks on Clubhouse. Guys, we will open up to you as well. And John will start moderating this session on Clubhouse while I finish my conversation with Dr. Gupta. There are, while there are some generic questions on this, your presentation sparked something about NFTs. And NFTs are a rage everywhere today. And the amount of money that is being, the potential of artists now being able to monetize their art in a digital art is so great. If you can simplify for rest of the audience who are not artists, what does it entail, and how does World University of Design help artists and creators in this NFT economy?
So one of the schools at WUD is the School of Visual Art. And we have students in creative painting and digital art and illustration. So already what we did was to bring in experts who have kind of portals through which you can take your art into the NFT fold or display them at those portals and sell or buy those things. So our students are already doing that. They're doing for themselves and they're doing for others. So right now it's only at the art stage, visual arts. But I think our fashion designers are now also exploring putting their work onto NFT. So that's how it's going.
Great. One question comes from Puneet. Says, what do you see as the future for the design professionals within India?
Sorry, come again. I missed that.
What is the future you see for the design professionals within India?
So in India, I think, I do not know if you're following India. There used to be, if you go, the only design department used to be with IIT Bombay, which goes back 60 years or 60, 70 years. And then there was NID, which is now about 60 years old. And the NIFTs came about 30 years, but NIFTs are only fashion, right? So they came in about 30 years back. So there are only 3 institutions, right? In university education, design wasn't there at all. It was not considered as one of the mainstream field of education. And that is where when WUD opened, it brought design into mainstream. And if you have been following in the last 2 years, since we opened and we started talking about design, nearly 100 universities have opened design programs. So the whole ecosystem is now becoming to fold. Our national education policy is talking about it. Our Prime Minister is talking about innovation and how to build it in various forums. We are talking about IPR. We are talking about building the whole system around it. So yes, design seems to be happening, and I see it growing and growing very fast in the in this decade. It's going. This is what I also say is perhaps which has been lacking, because so far India has been making goods for others, products for others, products based on others' designs. And if you were to get true value for what you are making, then it can only come if you design it yourself. Okay, so that's where everybody is heading across all industry segments.
Great. This is design is something which is the only constant that will be there in the future, because you will be required to manage people with both left brain and right brain thinking, and bringing it all together as somebody who understands design and the process of design and is able to guide both the creative types. Sometimes the creative types are also known as the weird types, who will be focused on their own self, lost in their own world. And on the other hand are the engineers, the logical thinkers, the majority of the folks listening to this event today. And it's the marriage of left and the right brain that is going to be very important. We've got to be polymaths. We've got to be able to synthesize the skills and capabilities of all kinds of folks in the future. And definitely this is going to be something very important. A statistic I want to quote here from a study that was done by Gartner. In fact, this was done that over the last 10 years, design-led companies have maintained a differentiated stock market advantage, outperforming the S&P 500 index by 211%. So you can imagine the stock market gains are being seen for this. And then there was another study which another analyst did, and they said that it's about differentiation by design. They found that 89% of the companies said that they would focus on UX to set them apart, And the second study found that 70% of the projects failed because of poor user experience. These are staggering numbers if you think about it. So definitely the kind of work, pioneering work that you are doing, combining multidisciplines into design is very, very, very interesting. And there are a lot of questions still coming. If you can stay on, great. But I know I had booked you only till this time. In fact, 15 minutes more than what I had. So with due gratitude to you, I would like to thank you. And if you can stay on, all the more great. But I have other speakers lined up who we need to get to.
Thank you. Thank you, Piyush. Namaste, everyone. It was a pleasure meeting you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that amazing keynote, let's go to our next speaker. And next speaker is none other than my friend Dolly Parrik. And let me introduce her briefly. While I know her from other nonprofits that I volunteer for, but here she's coming as a design professional, and she's innovative. She has accomplished social impact leadership projects with a lot of nonprofits, and over the last 20 years, she's had success in not only founding Loki Design, but also managing projects and teams and addressing some of humanity's biggest challenges like access to water, access to opportunities, and mental health. And she's passionate about leading organizations and projects that address real human needs and have far-reaching positive social impact, leveraging her experience and system design skills. Dolly has leveraged her experience in design and UX design to solve problems since 1990 as a design strategist, information architect, UX designer. She's worked in so many different roles across so many companies like Financial Engines, Medallia, Apple, think about it, PayPal, VeriSign, E-Trade, either consulting or full-time. So we are very privileged to have Dolly amongst us. Dolly, welcome. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Piyush, for the warm welcome and inviting me and Chess to the ASEI Summit, the Design Summit. It is my pleasure. And in the true spirit of being a designer and a disruptor, I am not going to follow my deck that I submitted to you and instead show you a movie that has inspired us. This is a movie, and I like to set this it is my tribute to a designer couple, Charles and Ray Ames. And they created this movie called Power of 10, which kind of was a very sort of impacting movie when I started studying at Mississippi State University for my master's. So I wanted to share that with all of the students over here, and I hope that that would inspire you, and then we'll talk a little bit.
Sure, please take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to share the screen. And let me know when you can hear the sound, okay?
Yeah, all good.
Okay.
The picnic near the lakeside in Chicago is the start of a lazy afternoon, early 1 October. We begin with a scene 1 meter wide, which we view from just 1 meter away. Now, every 10 seconds, we will look from 10 times farther away, and our field of view will be 10 times wider. This square is 10 meters wide, and in 10 seconds, the next square will be 10 times as wide. Our picture will center on the picnickers, even after they've been lost to sight. 100 meters wide. The distance a man can run in 10 seconds. Cars crowd the highway. Powerboats lie at their docks. The colorful bleachers are Soldiers Field. This square is a kilometer wide, 1,000 meters. The distance a racing car can travel in 10 seconds. We see the great city on the lake shore. 10 to the 4th meters, 10 kilometers. The distance a supersonic airplane can travel in 10 seconds. We see first the rounded end of Lake Michigan, then the whole Great Lake. 10 to the 5th meters. The distance an orbiting satellite covers in 10 seconds. Long parades of clouds, the day's weather in the Middle West. 10 to the 6th, a 1 with 6 zeros, 1,000,000 meters. Soon the Earth will show as a solid sphere. We are able to see the whole Earth now, just over a minute along the journey. The Earth diminishes into the distance, but those background stars are so much farther away that they do not yet appear to move. A line extends at the true speed of light. In 1 second, it half crosses the tilted orbit of the moon. Now we mark a small part of the path in which the Earth moves about the Sun. Now the orbital paths of the neighbor planets, Venus and Mars, then Mercury. Entering our field of view is the glowing center of our solar system, the Sun, followed by the massive outer planets, swinging wide in their big orbits. That outer orbit belongs to Pluto. A fringe of a myriad comets too faint to see completes the solar system. 10 to the 14th. As the solar system shrinks to one bright point in the distance, our sun is plainly now only one among the stars. Looking back from here, we note 4 southern constellations, still much as they appear from the far side of the Earth. This square is 10 to the 16th meters, 1 light year, not yet out to the next star. Our last 10-second step took us 10 light years further. The next will be 100. Our perspective changes so much in each step now that even the background stars will appear to converge. At last, we pass the bright star Arcturus and some stars of the Dipper. Normal but quite unfamiliar stars and clouds of gas surround us as we traverse the Milky Way galaxy. Giant steps carry us into the outskirts of the galaxy, and as we pull away, we begin to see the great flat spiral facing us. The time and path we chose to leave Chicago has brought us out of the galaxy along a course nearly perpendicular to its disk. The 2 little satellite galaxies of our own are the clouds of Magellan, 10 to the 22nd power, 1,000,000 light years. Groups of galaxies bring a new level of structure to the scene. Glowing points are no longer single stars, but whole galaxies of stars seen as one. We pass the big Virgo cluster of galaxies among many others, 100,000,000 light years out. As we approach the limit of our vision, we pause to start back home. This lonely scene, the galaxies like dust, is what most of space looks like. This emptiness is normal. The richness of our own neighborhood is the exception. The trip back to the picnic on the lakefront will be a sped-up version, reducing the distance to the Earth's surface by 1 power of 10 every 2 seconds. In each 2 seconds, we'll appear to cover 90% the remaining distance back to Earth. Notice the alternation between great activity and relative inactivity, a rhythm that will continue all the way into our next goal, a proton in the nucleus of carbon atom beneath the skin on the hand of the sleeping man at the picnic. Ten to the 9th meters, 10 to the 8th, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are back at our starting point. We slow up at 1 meter, 10 to the 0 power. Now we reduce the distance to our final destination by 90% every 10 seconds, each step much smaller than the one before. At 10 to the minus 2, 1/100th of a meter, 1 centimeter, we approach the surface of the hand. In a few seconds, we'll be entering the skin, crossing layer after layer from the outermost dead cells into a tiny blood vessel within. Skin layers vanish in turn. An outer layer of cells, felty collagen. The capillary containing red blood cells and a roughly lymphocyte. We enter the white cell. Among its vital organelles, the porous wall of the cell nucleus appears. The nucleus within holds the heredity of the man in the coiled coils of DNA. As we close in, we come to the double helix itself, a molecule like a long twisted ladder whose rungs of paired bases spell out twice, in an alphabet of 4 letters, the words of the powerful genetic message. At the atomic scale, the interplay of form and motion becomes more visible. We focus on one commonplace group of 3 hydrogen atoms bonded by electrical forces to a carbon atom. 4 electrons make up the outer shell of the carbon itself. They appear in quantum motion as a swarm of shimmering points. At 10 to the minus 10 meters, 1 angstrom, we find ourselves right among those outer electrons. Now we come upon the 2 inner electrons held in a tighter swarm. As we draw toward the atom's attracting center, we enter upon a vast inner space. At last, the carbon nucleus. So massive and so small. This carbon nucleus is made up of 6 protons and 6 neutrons. We are in the domain of universal modules. There are protons and neutrons in every nucleus, electrons in every atom, atoms bonded into every molecule out to the farthest galaxy. As a single proton fills our scene, we reach the edge of present understanding. Are these some quarks in intense interaction? Our journey has taken us through 40 powers of 10. If now the field is 1 unit, then when we saw many clusters of galaxies together, it was 10 to the 40th, or 1 and 40 zeros.
All right.
Okay. So I hope you enjoyed the movie. It was at 1.5x speed. So the speed that he was talking about may be off for most of you, but in the spirit of talking about movies and movies that inspire us, this is one of the best. The other little nugget of information I wanted to share about Charles and Ray Ames is that they visited India around 1962 in Ahmedabad, NID, and they were some of the pioneer visualizers of what design education and design schools should be in India. So I'm very, very honored to hear about the vision of Dr. Sanjay over here with us, and also can see where design can be a huge game changer for India. So with that, I would like to kind of share a little bit about my own journey in my journey in the last few years. I would just call it a few years instead of few decades instead. I should call it few decades over here. But I wanted to share this as a way of journey, since there would be a lot of young engineers or young participants over here. So each of us is a gifted artist, especially to our parents when we were young, right? Everybody loved to draw until we were about 8 years old. Until we started critiquing our own work and decided that we are not good at it. Well, artists continue to draw and create way past that age. So we are young at heart, even forever in our age. I studied to be an artist, not because I knew what that meant then, but because in my naive mind, I thought that that would be the closest things to deliver a beautiful world around me. The passion of an 18-year-old in me was directionless, and it took a few mentors who continued to ask me why. Why do you want to be an architect? Why create nicer spaces? Why help others feel better? These were my gurus who did not tell me what to do, but gently guided me to refine my why. I did not train to be a designer until much later, but I was trained as a community artist to deliver solutions for literacy in the tribe or engaging special needs kids to learn through art and performing arts. I strive to make a dent in the lives of others in the spirit of what Steve Jobs tried to do. So I strive to make a dent in the lives of others around me with each project with selfless passion at that time. But it was not sustainable because there was not much money to be made in social work. Getting into the field of design was accidental, maybe meant to be, as many would say. I trained to be a designer, collaborating with my friends on their design assignments, managing their freelance accounts, and writing up theses for my friends in design and multimedia with reading and writing disabilities. These were the friends who had disabilities, because very often designers are also people who face dyslexia. It's very interesting to kind of see the correlation over there. But it gave me an opportunity because I was reading and writing for them, and I was doing the research for them and formulating my own frameworks of design processes. Experience in community arts made it easy for me to be human-centric, and I started my formal career in user-centered experience design with my boss then and friend now, Chef Wadja at E-Trade, who has joined us today. It has been a long journey with him. Working with him, I learned the finer details of UI, UX, and design systems. Together for many years, we attended the BayCI, which stands for Bay Area Computer-Human Interactions at the Xerox Park, opening our minds to the potential of design. Here I am after years of seeing the discipline of design evolve from graphic design, experience design, design strategy, service design, systems design. Actually, I do have a full talk on design maturity model, and we can do that some other time. Many such disciplines that Dr. Gupta himself, Dr. Sanjay kind of covered. It has been a process of evolution as designers have become more comfortable in using the process of design to do more than just making pretty things. Design, as I've learned in the past few decades, especially with mentors like Nathan Shredroff and Steve Diller, who also have written books on experience one-on-one or making meaning or make it so. It is also something that I have learned with them. They have been my professors and have been great friends in this last few years. Design, as I've learned in the past few decades, is nothing but an intention to change. It broadens the definition of design, and while we dive into various fields of design and experience design today, I'd like each of us to ask ourselves, what would I like to change around me? Why do I want to change it? Frankly, we need more designers who are change makers in today's volatile world to fix our planet and improve the lives of people who live in it. We can all design, we can all innovate, and we can all build together to change the quality of life of everyone around us. with an intention to bring the change we want to see in the world around us. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dolly, for the inspirational words and, of course, the movie that we saw earlier. As per the flow of things, and we are at the halfway mark, and we would please stay on for the panel discussion later on. Let's go to Noah Elinsky, my friend from my IBM days, and I have to tell you a story about him. And Noah is a wonderful person who I first met while standing in queue at a Strata conference waiting to get his book autographed. So from those days to when I talked to him at that conference, he told me that he would be joining IBM. And lo and behold, we got a chance to be with the same company. And I was, of course, working at IBM at that time. And very soon after that, we had an opportunity to bring him. And when I was co-chairing the TyCon in 2014 timeframe, to come and speak about data visualization. And that's the thing he specializes in. He is, to be an O'Reilly author is a big thing. And he has dedicated his life to beautiful visualization, doing so many things that I think we can talk about data storytelling, learn a lot about data storytelling from him. So he believes in the power of intentionally crafted communication, and he has done decades of research as well as writing and speaking, but I don't want to go on and on introducing him. He will be the best person to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes on what he thinks his philosophy is of design. Take it away, my friend, Noah.
Thank you so much, Piyush. Let me just share my slide deck here.
While Noah shares his slide deck, one fact is he went to the same college, Reed College, where Steve Jobs also studied. So there is a common thread there. Over to you.
Also Peter Norton of the Norton Utilities, and Howard Vollum, who founded Tektronix way back in the, I don't know, the 20s or 30s or something, also went to Reed College. It's a strange, small world.
Wow. Well,
right.
We are honored to have you here, Noah. Please.
Thank you so much. So this is a talk about effective visualization design, but almost everything I'm about to say can also be applied to many, many other kinds of design, and honestly, many other kinds of communication. If you are writing a letter to apply for a grant or to convince investors to come invest in your company, it's a non-visual communication, but the design process still applies. When I'm doing user experience design, for the most part, the process still applies. So I'll call out ways that that this process is generalizable, even though we're talking about visualization specifically today. So first of all, visualization specific. Why do we care about visualization? Why is this something that we're interested in? Here's an example. This is a synthetic data set. And the interesting piece about this is there's sets 1, 2, 3, 4. The X values are the same in the first 3 of these. And in all 4 of these, the Y values have the same average, the same standard deviation. Statistically, with basic statistical analysis, they look very similar. They're not interesting statistically, not different statistically. When you visualize them, you can see that they're very, very different, right? And that's the point of visualization is if you give somebody this, it's very difficult to extract greater knowledge. You can look up one small data point, but it's very hard to see what's going on. Visualization gives us the overview and gives us access to much higher volumes of data in a way that the human brain can consume. And the way that we consume them, we have really excellent hardware in our eyeball and optic nerve and brain, and really excellent visualization processing software. Literally, we do things like data compression on the way in. The biggest data input into your brain is through the optic nerve. I saw one study probably 10 years ago that said that the speed of your optic nerve is about 8 or 9 megabits a second, which is the speed of first generation Wi-Fi, if you remember. So there's a lot of data coming into your brain through the eyeballs. And so we're really good, and as part of this image compression and other things, we detect patterns, because when you see a pattern, that's a compression, right? You can say, ah, that's a pattern, I know where the rest of this goes. But once you understand that there's a pattern, our eyes and our brain are very, very good at working together to detect when the pattern breaks, to detect pattern violations, right? And so what that means is we're very good at seeing trends. And then when there's a gap or an outlier, if we go back, we can see, where there's a gap here, where there's an outliers over here, the general arc of the trend. We're very, very good at detecting those. So this is what the brain is very good for. In the early 80s, Cleveland and McGill did some of the foundational research that we rely on for data visualization today. And they literally just measured how sensitive we are to different ways of encoding information. So you can encode information with, distance, with height, with size, with color, angle, like on telling time on a clock, darkness or brightness of colors, different colors of the rainbow, all these different things. And they just rank them and how sensitive we are, how accurately we can differentiate these properties. So we're going to come back to this, but the point that I'm getting at here is all of this that I'm about to talk about, there's cognitive science and the science of perception is behind it. So there's definitely an art to it, to visualization, but there's also a real scientific foundation that guides our design process, which is beautiful. I have a physics degree, so I love knowing that there's a real foundational answer underneath it. It's not just opinions. Okay. So here's the process for visualization and of the design. I apologize, by the way, if I'm going a little quickly. I love this talk, and it's a short window for it, but we're going to make it work. So here's how this goes. Number one, for any design process, for any written communication, for data visualization, you have to know your purpose. Why are we doing this? Who's it for? What do they care about? What do I need to convince them? What do I need to teach? That's number one. If you don't know your purpose, it makes everything else difficult. Purpose informs all the rest of your choices. We're going to talk about all these in a little more detail, by the way. Number two, once you know your purpose, then you have to pick what content, what to include, what to exclude, what matters today. Same thing if I'm doing an interface design. If the interface design is, selecting seats on an airplane or making a restaurant reservation, we have to know, for a restaurant reservation, the time, date, how many people. These are the content that have to be included to accomplish my task. Number three is structure. This is the physical layout on the page, and we talk about physical placement first before we talk about things like typography and color and shape, because that physical placement is almost always the easiest to detect and the most powerful of the visual encodings. And so we do that one first, and then after that, number four, we do formatting. And so this is color, typography, icons, interaction, all these other things. That has to come after we've got the structure. So we're going to talk more about each of these very quickly. So you have to start with the people, not with the technology. There are some tools where, this is from Excel, obviously, where you go in and you can choose these. I mean, some of these are just ridiculous. These like pyramids, 3D pyramids in space. Never will that be the correct data visualization if you actually want to communicate real data. But the bigger point of this slide is you don't know what graph you want till you understand who it's for and what you're trying to teach them. Because different graphs, it's valid to put the same information in different graph types, but they're going to communicate different nuances of the message. Some of them are going to communicate comparison better than change over time, for example. So we'll talk more about that. So you have to know the purpose. And these are the sorts of questions. Why am I creating it? Who's it for? What do they need to understand? What actions am I enabling? So if I'm giving this to a decision maker or I'm trying to teach somebody something, what do I have to teach them? How will it be consumed, right? A little 10 centimeter screen is really different from a meter screen. Both of these might have color and interactivity, which you don't get if you're generating a report that's going to be printed in black and white and mailed out on paper or sent out, emailed out as a PDF, right? Where you don't get the interactivity. So all of these things need to inform your choices, but primarily the most important ones are who is it for? What do they need to learn? What do I need to teach them in this situation? So that's purpose, and you'll iterate on that, right? You'll have to refine that and talk more about that. Then we go to content, where we have to talk about what relationship matters, what data matters. This is informed by purpose. Now, this is an exercise in editing. This is an exercise in refining and focusing. And the first dashboard that I see every engineer build is they say, we're going to take the whole database and we're going to put everything on the screen. And I guarantee you, your answer is on here somewhere. You just have to go find it, right? And so this is what I call the show all the data type of dashboard. And the problem is if you, the designer, aren't going through this process of thinking through how this is going to be used and what's really important, then you force every one of your customers to go hunt every single time, rather than giving them a tool, right? So the similar thing here is, we maybe have all seen these weather maps with the temperatures and the weathers all over the country in the United States here, and the high pressure zones and the low pressure zones. There's a ton of data here. There's a ton of data, and this is sort of the equivalent of what we just looked at with all the huge dashboard. But as a designer, I encourage you, stay on target, right? Really understand who this is for and what you're giving them. My favorite dashboard is on the next slide. It's one bit of information, one bit, right? And so it starts, I guarantee you, it starts here, but it's been refined, the experience has been edited, and what you get is, do I need an umbrella, right? Now, I don't leave the house to go to work today, but a few years ago, I live in Seattle. It's raining half the time. So I'm late for the bus. I'm running out the door. I just need to know if I need an umbrella or which jacket to grab, right? One bit of information. I don't care about the high pressure zone moving west. I just want to know if it's going to rain. And so this is very powerful because this guides decision-making for me in a way that this does not guide decision-making. This gives me a huge overview, but it causes me, the user, to have to digest and evaluate and all these things. If I do this, if I give somebody an answer, then they get to make a choice very quickly. I've done the hard work for them, and I've added a ton of value to my customer's experience by giving them something closer to the answer that they need. All right, that was all about selecting content. So the goal then being to focus the content as much as you can to narrow it down. Now, the structure is driven by purpose. There's all these very common archetypal structures in business. We want to compare things. We want to see how they change. We want to show composition, fractions of the whole. We want to show correlation. How does one thing affect the next one? And finally, geography. We want to show where things are on the map. These are these sort of archetypal purposes. And so when you're defining your purpose, when you say, I want to show my investors the growth in this sector that I'm hoping to move into, well, that's a change over time. When you want to say that we are, outperforming all of our competition for the last 180 days, that's a comparison, right? This is where you start the thinking of, do we need to show a change? Do we need to show a comparison? And this will inform the different types of graphs that you use. So I drew these. This is the same data set drawn with different graphs, both completely valid. Neither of these graphs is wrong, but they allow you very different ways of analyzing the knowledge here. So structure, we're talking about the structure here. For position, I said the position is the most powerful. In this case, we're just using vertical height on the page, but this could be a bar graph, right? There's lots of ways to use vertical height or position. Could be horizontal position, doesn't matter. But in this case, we're using vertical height, and you can very, very quickly see the trends here, that these light ones here are all clustered at the top. This is unfortunately low-income countries at the time and had very few vaccine doses administered. And then as the wealth of the country goes up, the fraction of the country that has been vaccinated also goes up, right? But you can see this very, very easily. These comparisons are very easy to do with this vertical position because our eyes and brain are so good at understanding position and comparing and quantifying position. So same thing, bar graph here. We're looking at the full height of the bars. Really, we're just kind of looking at which of these is the tallest and the shortest. But the beauty is how good we are at this. So I can say, what's the tallest bar on the screen? And it takes how long? Like 1 second, less than 1 second to see what the tallest bar is and what the shortest bar is. And if I say, what's the shortest bar? You're like, look at these two are definitely the shortest. I think it's blue. We're looking at like 1%, maybe 2% of the entire height of this. And everybody in the world who has good enough vision can say, yeah, that blue one's the shortest one, down to a resolution of like 1 or 2%. That's astounding, right? It took no time at all to do that. Our brains are so good at this comparison. The other nice thing about bars is we can clump them in different ways. So this is a story about what's happening every week across these 5, let's say they're products, but you could switch this around and group it. Product 1, product 2, product 3. And within each product, you could look at the grouping of how did this do over a 5-week period. Slightly different story, slightly different purpose, right? That would be a comparison of how are my products performing against themselves week over week. This is for each week, how are the products performing against each other. Same graph, just a little bit different sorting order. So really, really powerful there. And also the beauty of bar graphs, everybody thinks they're so boring. Everybody in the world knows how to read them, at least in the business world. Every tool you've ever touched can make a bar graph. You don't have to teach anything. You're not inventing everything new. They're very easy to create and they're very accessible, and there's a lot of efficiency in there. So not so exciting, but very capable graph. Okay. Same data, by the way, just a reminder, lines graph. Now here we're talking very much about continuity. We're talking about this change over time. And this enables a piece of insight that we didn't see on the bar graphs, which is, hey, look at week 3, everybody went down, but this orange one went up. That's very interesting to me. Why was orange going up in week 3 and everybody else went down? There's a whole story in there. I don't know what it is. It's just made up data, right? Now, this doesn't have the full height. We're not comparing the absolute value. We're just looking at the relative change here. So this line graph magnifies these small differences and doesn't give us the full height comparison, but it does show us these small differences and helps us with continuity. So again, same data, but a slightly different purpose. We use a slightly different structure here to represent it, to tell a slightly different version of the story. Pies, a very, very short story from IBM. I drew this when I was at IBM. The blueberry section is blue, the cherry is red, etc., all the way around the pie. When IBM published this, one of their editors changed the section for pecan pie, so it's a nut with the brown shell. They changed that to a green wedge. And I was like, did this editor not get the joke? I don't understand. Maybe IBM has some humor. I don't work for IBM anymore. A lot of really, really brilliant data visualization people no longer work for IBM. They had great folks. In any case, some people really love to hate on pies. Pies are not totally wrong. You just have to use them well. And so the answer with this is pies. You don't get a lot of high fidelity, right? That's why they're almost always labeled with a %, because the comparison is very hard. And you don't get very many slices that matter. 4, 5, 6 slices that matter. Everything else is kind of in that wedge marked other, right? So you could compare, populations of 50 United States, but once you get past 5 or 6, they're all pretty small and you can't really compare them usefully. Here's how hard it is to compare pie wedges. You can look at these 3 and you can say, I guess I can see that, this first one, this black one looks kind of big compared to the red, I guess, but it's really hard to tell exactly which one's bigger in which situation. This is from Wikipedia, by the way, credit where credit is due. So here's the bar version of these pies. Which one's the tallest, which one's the shortest? Instantaneous. Takes no time at all to see this, right? You don't get that precision with pies because our eyes and brain aren't as well calibrated for the wedge size as they are for these vertical height things. So pies aren't wrong, just have to be careful when you use them. Scatter plots, this is one of my favorite scatter plots. So scatter plots are very good for correlation. How does this value and that value compare? This one happens to be the, I think this is the Rotten Tomatoes score of movies, the original movie on this axis and the sequel on this axis. If the sequel's better, it's above the line. If the sequel's worse, very common, it's below the line. My favorite pair of movies is right about here. And one quick, if anybody has a quick guess, I'm not seeing the comments, I apologize for what this one is. Everybody's always curious. It is in fact a science fiction franchise up there. I'll talk about what that answer is in a minute. Scatter plots are really powerful. This is from Gapminder. So this is showing health and wealth of nations. There's so much data here, which I don't have time to get into today, unfortunately. But what this is showing is income per country, life expectancy, 200 countries color-coded by continent, size of the country's population, and then you can push play down here and you can see these change over time, right? So we're talking about 4, 5, 6 different axes of information that are all able to be visible concurrently. And that's a huge amount of knowledge, right? It's very, very powerful. It's very easy to get carried away and add too much knowledge to a scatter plot, but when they're well done, they can be enormously compelling. The movie where, just to go back because I said I would, where the first film was only so-so and the second film was much, much better. That's the original first 2 Star Trek films. Okay.
Trek,
so,
not Star Wars, right?
Trek, yes, not Star Wars, Trek. First Star Wars, first Trek was not so good, but number 2 was apparently very good. Okay, formatting. So formatting is like a semester of graduate school just to get started. We're going to sweep that all under the rug of like 3 slides. It's, like I said, it's color, it's typography, interaction, labels, iconography, all this stuff. It's super important, but beautiful frosting will not save a bad cake. You have to do the function first and the sexy second. You have to have your purpose and your content and structure. And when you have those good, then the formatting makes it excellent. But if these are not good cakes, it doesn't matter how pretty it is, it's still never going to be a good cake. If you've got the wrong data or you're presenting the wrong thing to the wrong audience, it doesn't matter how pretty it is, you can't be successful. So everybody talks about visualizations being beautiful, and beauty is really important as long as the functionality is there, because the ultimate goal here is to communicate with people, right? And if you want to be effective at communicating, you've got to know your purpose and use the right content, not too much, not too little, and structure it properly. Now, formatting has a ton of value. This is a very, very simple formatting. This is just conditional formatting of a spreadsheet. But what we're doing here is we're calling attention to the high and the low values. That's super powerful. I don't know if these are like, I don't know what these are. Temperatures, doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. This gives me enormous information about the trending of what's going on in this table very, very quickly, in a way that would be very, very challenging to evaluate if I was just trying to read through each digit and compare it to the cells around it, right? So this is a very simple formatting, but it immediately calls my attention to what's important and what's interesting. There's a million other examples, not today. Finally, here's a table that I drew. You can download it, this URL below, complexdiagrams.com/properties. There's a whole white paper that I developed at IBM that goes with this that talks about how to use it. But the point is, this tells you which of these different visual encodings down the one side are useful for different data types. So you know, if you have categorical data, cities or teams or flavors, we would go down this categorical section and pick one of these that says good. We want color or shape. Whereas if I have numeric data, I probably want one of these ones in this quantitative column here. We want length or size or angle. So I could talk about this for an hour. I have, not today. So the very brief summary here. You have to have your purpose. Purpose is paramount. If you don't have that, you don't know what direction you're going. Focus your content to only what's necessary in that communication. This is probably one of the most common failures that I see. People want to present too much that isn't actually important to their audience. Select the right structure that supports the purpose and then also reveals the content, and then use formatting to focus rather than to distract. There it is. Thank you. And that is the end of the presentation. And I hope I didn't speak too quickly, but you know, trying to stay on time.
That's great, Noah. We have John reciting the room in Clubhouse as well. One thing which I definitely liked is having the data, the foundation of data being, you know, you can't do anything with visualization if the data is not there. So if the data is not clean, you'll get bad visualization and you'll make bad decisions. So that's what it is. So, wonderful. Thank you. With that, Noah, just stay tuned. We may get into Q&A, but please get on to Clubhouse, and John is starting his session there. So please, Dolly, you and Noah, get on to Clubhouse. And while we go to our next speaker, Sabira. Now, thanks, Sabira, Sabira is principal UX designer at Informatica. And Sabira, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself in the interest of, I'm echoing because I'm on Clubhouse as well as here. So take it away. I'll be mute.
Thank you for staying patient. Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to jump straight into the presentation again in the interest of time. And I'll talk a little bit about myself in the process. So I want to talk about how do you go about writing a UX designer resume. A little bit about me, which might explain why you probably want to spend the next 5 minutes listening to me. So I started my career as a software engineer. I'm a software engineer by education. And I realized that my heart was really in design. I used to code UIs, but my heart was in the design stage of the process. And I switched from software engineering to UX design within the same company just to pursue my passion. I loved it. And at some point, I was ready to move on to my next job and look for my next UX design role. At that point, I realized that my resume that I wrote as a software engineer, I cannot use that same resume, that same format, that same content to apply for a UX designer job. It just does not work. So I spoke to several people, read a lot, and I completely redesigned my resume. So I'm going to talk to you about a few things that I learned in the process. Today, I regularly review UX designer resumes and portfolios, and I also interview UX designers. So the most wonderful thing about being a UX designer and designing your resume is that you can use your resume to demonstrate your UX design skills. Using your resume, just one piece of paper, you can show that you know how to simplify and organize information. You can show that you can fulfill the user's needs, and you can show that you can create appealing designs. And I'll talk about each of these. So how do you show that you can simplify and organize information? Well, you can be concise on your resume. Don't go on writing long drawn sentences. You can make your resume easy to read. And there are several techniques you can employ. Some of them are you can use bullets and you can avoid long sentences in your resumes. And also, I cannot emphasize this enough, stick to a one-page resume. Unless you have a ton of experience, you want to put everything in one page. So an example, this blurb on the top you see, it's taken from a UX designer resume. It's a little difficult to read. This exact same blurb can be rewritten the way it is at the bottom. And now it's more easy to read and you can just scan it through really quickly. So you want to aim for this blurb on the bottom. That's the experience you want in your resume. As a UX designer, one of the aspects of your job is to fulfill the user's needs. In this case, your user is your UX hiring manager. How do you fulfill his or her needs? So start by reading the job description carefully. If it asks for a certain skill set, make sure you emphasize that information in your resume. And always provide a link to your portfolio in the resume. Your resume will be thrown out otherwise. You can create appealing design in your resume. Several ways to do this. A few things you can use is, make sure you're using adequate white space. So this makes your resume easy to scan. Use one, maybe two fonts. Don't go all crazy with it. And this third one, use color, is a little controversial. I personally like using color in my resume. I think it gives my resume some personality. But if you aren't comfortable with it, that's okay. Go ahead with a black and white resume. I've seen plenty of that are also very well done. So again, an example, on the left-hand side, we have a resume. That's a UX designer resume. And I have seen several resumes like this. This exact same resume can be redesigned to see the way it is on the right-hand side. And you can just look at this. The resume on the right-hand side is much more appealing, easier to scan, easier to get information from the resume on the right. So that's the experience that you want. That's the resume that you want. And again, this is just one format. There's several ways of organizing this information to get a similar experience. Some other things which are good for just any resume. Check for typos and grammatical errors in your resume. A great way to do this is by printing it out and reading it out loud to yourself. It might sound silly to you, but you're going to catch several issues in your resume when you do it like this. Also, just always send your resume in PDF format. Don't assume everyone has Word doc on their machine. And choose a good file name, first name, last name, _uxdesigner.pdf. Please do not name your resume, resume.pdf. And that's about it. Thank you.
Wonderful, Sabira. This is very useful for not only youngsters, but also folks who are in the process of looking for a change. So very timely tips. And I believe we have two speakers who will introduce themselves before we get to Shrinali, who will then get into kind of a Q&A with everybody. So I would want for us to hear from Wadja. Chess is somebody, as Dolly mentioned, she looks up to, and she has worked with Chess in the past. And one of the things I learned was that He was the first designer at LinkedIn and first designer at YouTube as well. And the logo of YouTube that you see was designed by Chess. So Chess, take it away. Tell your story, please.
Thank you. Great introduction. It's very kind. And thanks for taking some time to listen to what I have to say. I'll just start with just spend some time on one anecdote in my journey as a designer. As Dolly said, I've known her for a good while, almost 20 years. And when we met, I was running or at least leading the visual design of E-Trade, E-Trade Financial. And my mentality and my approach to design at that time was very top down. I'm the genius. I am the creator. The rest of the design team should follow my lead because that's the way design is. It was very ego driven. And it wasn't until I stepped away from E-Trade and joined LinkedIn as going from a team leader to being the only designer at LinkedIn, where I was forced to confront some realities about design and also the nature of truly good design. The type of design that I had been practicing was not solution driven, it was ego driven. So Dolly, you'll remember that. That was, I think, a different Chess at that time. And it was LinkedIn that forced me to make some changes. And so one of the things that I had to learn to do was to come to the table with some humility. I used to think I'm a designer. No one else gets to make design decisions. I design. I've come to learn to see almost everyone as potential design influencer. Everyone from obviously engineering and marketing, but also customer service can very much drive design thinking. Even the front desk, coming into the reception area and asking the person who's running the front desk what they might think of a design. So, in an abstract sense, we're all designers of our own lives, but certainly within the context of a company or a technology group, everyone is a designer. The entire company is a designer. I might be the practitioner of design. I might be the hands that make it happen. But in this case where I'm going to show, LinkedIn was the tool that brought me to that realization. So I had been working at LinkedIn now. It had been already a year old when I started. And my mission was to redesign it, make it prettier, which as a graphic designer, easy to do. I know fonts, I know color, I know space, I know structure. I'll redesign it, I'll make it prettier. That will increase growth. It turns out it didn't really do that much. Making something pretty was the first case in my career where I was somewhat humbled. It was not increasing engagement with our users. It was not, moving the hockey puck from where we needed it to go to where it was. And I was struggling. I spent a good year of my time trying to get, the one metric that we were trying to move at LinkedIn was profile completion. How do we get people to fill out the profile? So we're looking at 2005 here. The typical profile had a name, maybe your current job, but no endorsements, no education. And for LinkedIn to have a valuable property, for the business to be able to succeed and tell its story and also just do what it wants to do, we needed to have profile completion at a higher rate. We needed to have education filled out. We needed to have endorsements for the users to get more value out of it as well. And it was this chicken and the egg problem that we were trying to solve all the time. Like, if we could only tell users, oh, if you fill out your profile, you'll get more use out of it. And that's one of the things Reed would often talk about in his meetings. It's like, God, how do we tell people, And so as a graphic designer, when you're a carpenter, every problem is a nail, right? So as a graphic designer, I was spending all my time doing explainers. Oh, if you only fill this in, reconnect with long lost colleagues. And this is before Facebook. This was a really powerful thing, really compelling. Why don't people fill out we tell them all the time, do this and you'll get more value. Do this. And hey, if you fill out your profile, oh my gosh, you'll get so much value out of it. And I was spending all of my time telling, imploring, begging people, oh, if you just fill out your profile, you'll get so much use out of it. Because we were also hearing anecdotally, people would say, well, I come to LinkedIn, I fill out, I do the minimum, I fill out my profile, I don't get much use out of it, and I go away. And we were hearing this time and again. I even made a flash movie, showing people what happens when you fill out your profile. Oh, you're gonna get so much more use out of it once you add more connections, once you fill out your profile. None of it was working. A year in, a year after the redesign, a year after me just throwing everything against the chalkboard, working with product, trying to see what might work, telling. I was at my wit's end. I was certainly humbled. The tools that I had as a graphic designer weren't working with our audience. And then one day, when I was at my lowest, it was sometime in midday, one of my product managers came to me, Greg Cervelli, and we only had two at the time, Josh Elliman and Greg. He came to me with a printout of a Microsoft of a Microsoft modal. And I was like, what's this? What are you giving me here? And he goes, yeah, maybe you could, maybe this might be the unlock. Maybe this might be the thing that can help with profile completion. I said, what do you mean? Like we show a modal of data going over, like, what are you talking about? He goes, no, the progress bar. What if we did just like a little indicator of how much progress you've made on your profile? And I was like, and I sat back and I thought, well, we do know that our users are completionists. They're early adopters for one, but two, that they're completionists. They're the typical, inbox zero types who want to check everything off. They want to check off everything off their list. They want to go to bed every night with everything done. We know this about these users. Yeah, that makes total sense. And giving myself some credit, the idea was not mine, but I had the openness, and really I was driven to it, the openness to accept an idea that was not from a designer, that came from a product guy who I frankly didn't have, a whole lot of we didn't have a great working relationship at that time. So I wasn't generally open to his ideas. But here he had presented me with something that was, it created a light bulb. And I then could take that idea and run with it. I was able to recognize and humbly recognize that this is a great idea, and yeah, let's do it. And what was also brilliant about his idea was that we could do it on our own without bothering the back-end engineering team. We could do this just using JavaScript. We could scrape our own profiles and add a weighted value to how much, between, adding position, adding a recommendation, adding so many connections, you just add a almost arbitrary weight to these things. And we shipped it in one release. It was truly a sprint in every form of the word. And when we released it, huge uptake in profile completion. 1 year later, so this is a typical LinkedIn profile from 2005. 1 year later, the typical LinkedIn profile had up to 3 recommendations, at least 1 education, and much more experience filled out. This is in 1 year's time, due to the small, you'd think insignificant addition of just a progress bar. That one idea was one of the huge drivers of growth and adoption at LinkedIn. And it happened because someone was willing to maybe insult the designer with an idea, but also with a designer who was receptive to ideas outside of his own domain of design. So that's that was a big turning point in my journey, both as a designer, but also thinking in terms of showing and not telling, but showing, right? To show that before and after, as you add these things, as you take these actions, you will see increase in your ability to influence your network, but also in your progress, and scratch that itch. This is also like an early example of gamification, right? So that's my one anecdote in my journey as a designer, that this one little device was something that made me a better designer, but it also increased usage at LinkedIn, and is one of the major drivers of its growth to this day.
What a great story, Jess. Thank you for sharing this. I'm not sure if you had anything else in your deck, but obviously I hadn't seen this before, and we had initially talked that you'll just save extempore, but I'm glad you brought the visual. So this is wonderful. And to all the job seekers out there, LinkedIn is definitely one of the things first things that you should do. You should make your profile. And this is such an incredible value that we are having for our viewers and listeners, that this is something which is both from what we heard from Sabira in terms of preparing the resume. And again, today I consider that nobody looks for a paper resume as such. The first thing they do is they go to LinkedIn. And for you to have a pioneering contribution in that space for all of us, I think this is wonderful. Glad to meet you here. And please stay on. There's a task for you right after we get to Shrinali. Let me just check. John, were you trying? Okay. John is busy on Clubhouse session, and some of the speakers here are there as well. But let's, in the interest of time, let's get to Shrinali. Shrinali, and one thing which I have to say is this entire session came out of my conversation with Shrinali 6 months back, when she wanted some feedback on her portfolio. And I said, I may not be the best person, plus I'll be only one person giving you feedback. Let me bring you the entire world to you. So Shrinali is an adventurer in both life and design. She is a fresh grad, recently moved from Michigan to New York, and she's enjoying the New York City, I can tell. And her storytelling abilities and understanding of user needs are paramount, and she's a visual and user experience designer. And she has recently taken up a new job at Wadja. I had not heard of that company before, but I know what is Infosys, must be a subsidiary of Invi. And with that, she works on client projects. Take it away, Shrinali, with your portfolio.
Okay, hi everyone. So basically, I'm somebody who has just gone through a lot of UX recruiting as an early career professional. So kind of to echo off a little bit of Sabira's presentation too, and just talk about what I've learned throughout my journey, specifically talking about my portfolio presentation portion of the interview process. So I'm just gonna share what that looks like. All right. So, oops. Okay, can everybody see this okay?
Yep, it's coming up.
Okay.
It's loading up.
Okay. All right. So yeah, basically, I've gone through a lot of interviewing the past few months before I got my job, and just gone through a lot of self-guided research, mentoring, guidance, and networking to be able to put this together in a way that I feel has provided, like, just been a great success to me in my interviews more recently. So what I'm going to just be sharing with you guys today is a slide deck that I used for a portfolio presentation for one of my interviews at Google a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, actually. But yeah, so some things that I've learned to do with this portion of the interview is to switch over from using your actual portfolio website and actually creating a personalized slide deck for the interview and the company that you're interviewing itself. I actually created and added in these illustrations to add in more of a visual component that helps your viewer get a better feel of you as a designer, and it makes your presentation just more personable. So that's how I started it off. And then going forward, really, I think like having some components like this agenda helps the interviewer see how you're able to combine your UX and experience design skills with the interview task itself. So using like certain like pagination components and elements and just organizing it in a way that makes your interview just more enjoyable and clear. So and then I talk about a little bit more about me, just really briefly to start off. And then going forward, more about me. I've fleshed out my kind of resume into this visual portion of the interview or presentation, going through my background, a few of my jobs and past experiences, and kind of really highlighting those positions in a visually compelling way. And for the sake of time, I'll just be going through one of my projects that I use typically in interviews, and which is a mobile app concept that is currently live on my portfolio website, but I've just transferred it over to this slide deck. And then going through like the typical traditional steps that you would outline a UX project, starting off with the project overview, keeping that nice and concise, and then going and highlighting boldly the problem statement. This is, I think, a key part of going through a UX project, and highlighting exactly what the problem that you're trying to solve is straight off the bat. I also incorporated a design thinking framework method from IDEO to just kind of also highlight how I'm able to resource from other designers and other methodologies that can serve purpose to my project as well. So this was that slide, and then going ahead and outlining upcoming goals just really clearly, and then moving on to the actual raw like process and design and discovery and research phase of my project. Also, once again, adding in illustrations and visual components that can make the presentation more engaging. And then I'll just go through quickly more of the research and discovery. So I have competitive analysis, interviews, personas, and then again, trying to get away from all that text heavy content and just highlighting exactly what you want to talk about. And I'll go through various personas. I've also added in sketches that also show you're able to do a lot of like low fidelity, quick research and brainstorming. And then moving and taking those into a user flow, and then going into just the iteration process of taking your designs from lo-fi to hi-fi and how those wireframes work. And this is actually like a part that I added in later to my portfolio, just going through actually the details of how you made changes to your previous designs and what they meant for you. And then getting into the prototypes and having these just very clearly outlined between tasks that you're trying to show. And then these were all created in Figma. There was a lot of Figma fans in the chat too. So I also use a lot of Figma. So then I have a few of those. And then finally, the last part of the portfolio consists of usability testing and just evaluation and what I did to learn about how my users actually interacted with the product as well. And then finally, outlining some takeaways. So basically, I just wanted to share this as a resource to anybody else who might be going through some recruiting for UX roles right now. And I know that any type of help and guidance that I was able to get throughout that process was really helpful to me. So hopefully this is helpful. Also, I know that there are some great speakers here as well. So I know if anybody else has any thoughts to share about the presentation that I just presented, feel free to make any feedback.
Yeah, Shrinali, thank you for sharing your portfolio. As we are running out of time on this call and we have to jump onto the Clubhouse event as well. I do want to take two of the speakers to spend 2 minutes each. critiquing as well as giving you pointers. And hopefully that will become an educational role play for rest of the audience. And obviously for the students who will be who are not on the current call, but they will be listening or viewing this via recording. I want to go first with Sabira, who is an engineer turned designer. So with her, after her computer science degree, she gets into design and she has one kind of perspective. And then after that, we'll get to chess. So Sabira, take it away with your feedback.
Thank you. So Shrinali, wonderful structure on your portfolio. I mean, you ticked off most of the check boxes that I look for. And the stuff that I'm going to talk about is just pure nitpicking. I wanted to say, first of all, I love that you moved from a web content to your a slide presentation for the portfolio presentation, because the format in which you deliver things absolutely matters. I love that you talked about your role and about the team that you worked with. That's the thing I often see missing in portfolio presentations, and that helps set context. Even clarifying the problem statement up front, again, very important, and not many people do it. So it ticked off a lot of the boxes. The only one thing I would add, and I'm not sure if this was there because we rushed through the presentation, obviously, is what you learned out of it. So maybe towards the end, add a slide on, okay, I did this, but I learned a few things out of this, and this is how I'm going to change things moving forward. I would think overall, that's the only thing missing. Another point for everyone just to be aware of, typically try to have at least 2 presentations in your portfolio. One where you're going in deep, so you can really talk about your design process and talk about things in depth, and one where you're going broad. So you can, maybe a bigger project that you worked on, a bigger picture of the challenges that you face. So people can see, okay, this is my skill and this is the kind of things that I can work on. But wonderful structure to your presentation. Thank you.
Wonderful, Sabira. Stay on for, if you can, a little bit more on this. I want to get to chess and then we'll get to questions. And by the way, Shrinali would be moderating the Q&A here while I go to the Clubhouse event. So take it away, Chess.
Yeah, I mean, Shrinali, excellent work. Great portfolio. Having been a hiring manager off and on, you part of what you're doing is salesmanship, and you sold me. Like you make me want to have you come in and interview in person. Your structure is spot on. I would agree with Sabira that maybe there's just one anecdote that you flesh out. Like the overview is great, but then to be able to dive in on one thing and show, you mentioned research, user research, maybe do a deep dive on that research and what your findings were again. But wow, great work. Your work is your portfolio, your presentation is better than 90% of what you see out there. So great stuff.
Thank you. No, it definitely took a lot to get to that point too. I just think, but those points are definitely great for feedback.
Yeah, and I will say it's clear that you've put a lot of time and effort, and it's clearly been iterated on in all the best ways. Like it feels like it's very thoughtful in how you present yourself and you as a designer. So also to Sabira's point, the presentation itself is a design, and you show what a great designer you are just in that.
Thank you. So I do see one question in the chat. I'm just gonna read it out loud. For early designers who might not have too much experience with large team collaboration, what advice would you give for how to effectively incorporate design thinking, ideation, and effectively work with other stakeholders? So I guess I can just open up that to you guys who might people who have more experience with working in teams.
Sabira, do you want to take that first?
I can take that first. Okay. It's really tough. If you're an early designer and you just don't have that experience, it's okay. Don't show that experience. Your resume, your portfolio really speaks to you, and you want to present yourself the best way you can, and you want to present yourself the way you are. If you lie, it's going to come out. It's going to show in subtle ways, and that's going to impact you. If you're an early designer and you're interviewing, people understand that you may not have those large scale projects. You might have something smaller, But deep dive then, talk about the real challenges that you had, talk about the difficult problems that you have and how you went about solving it. Just be yourself and things will be okay.
Yeah, you don't need to solve, the world's problems. You hear this time and again, I'm not saying anything, but, they just, in general, hiring managers want to see how you think. Do you have a toolkit in terms of your approach to problem solving that allows you to, kind of rapidly think through problems and attack it in different ways, which your portfolio shows that you've got a variety of tools at your arsenal that you're able to attack. So yeah, I'd say it's not about, blowing people away with the portfolio per se or the big brand names. It's really about blowing them away with the way you think.
If anybody else has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But I guess while we wait for the Clubhouse questions, I can ask a couple other ones.
Yeah, there's a bunch of questions coming from Clubhouse, but okay. I think the context we're missing. So continue with your question. And I'm asking John to join us on Zoom. So he'll be coming from Clubhouse to you guys in a moment.
Okay. Well, I guess I had one more question in mind that I might as well just ask. But I guess from at least what I've been experiencing is just a lot of education and just understanding traditional UX methodologies that you typically go through. Like, this is what you have to do. This is like the research you start with. This is the like discovery you start with, and this is like the usability testing you do. And it typically just seems like a flow that's kind of accepted. But my question is, what advice would you give to a designer to focus more on exactly what the user, like how to be more user focused and centered with your actual decisions in the UX process? If that makes sense.
Yeah. I'll take this first. There isn't any one recipe. Every company, every product has different users, has different problems to solve, and the way you attack it, the design thinking methodology is a good starting point, but you always have to adapt it to your own needs. And there might be some steps you skip. There might be, maybe you skip a step and you go back to that later. So it's always, everything is contextual. The problem itself is contextual to the process, and the process is informed by the product so it's, you always have to reinvent your process with every product you're working on. It's just the name of the game.
I don't have much to add. It is exactly as Jess said. The only other thing I'll say is experience. As you work on more designs, you will develop instinct, you'll be able to tailor this to your needs. Just find a mentor to start off with, get someone to help you understand things, and then slowly you'll get there.
All right, guys, I know there are a lot of questions in the chat and I would want to not lose them. So let's continue the discussion, but we are running out of time. We promised that we'll end this event sharp at 11 here and then move the party to Clubhouse and continue there for a lot longer. But for this portion of the session, thank you to all the speakers who've spoken so far. Let me invite Surabhi Kaul. She's a board member of ASI Silicon Valley to come on the screen and say her last words here on this session. Surabhi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Piyush. Let me turn off the Clubhouse as well so you guys don't hear the echo. Hope the sound is okay. I just wanted to take a few minutes and thank all the presenters as well as all of the team here as we close the session today. Very, very engaging and amazing discussion. So thanks to all the speakers and all the engagement here. Wanted to give a special shout out to Piyush, you as well as the whole team. that has invested so much time and effort in getting this amazing session and content ready for us. It takes a lot of efforts, a lot of hands, and a lot of background work to achieve a successful event like this. So kudos to the whole team. And I also wanted to call out that we are always looking at, for new volunteers to come and support us and also give us ideas on new initiatives and engagements and ways to engage the community. So please reach out to any one of us with ideas or desire to be a volunteer. And I wanted to call out that we have our next event on October 16th, where Aditya from the youth, who's the UN youth icon, we will be having an interview. And I don't know who's hosting the interview. Piyush, maybe you can share that.
Yeah, we have our youth coordinator, Aditya, another Aditya, doing that. And we already did one with the Moonshot Junior founder girl last week, Anya Jain. And every month we do highlight one youth. So this time it's Aditya's turn. So that's next Saturday. And we do events almost every weekend on Clubhouse. So and this will be both on YouTube as well as Clubhouse. So please join for that. And take it away.
I just wanted to also share that along with looking for volunteers, we are also coming up on our board of directors elections for 2022. And this is for all the 5 professional chapters that we have of ASEI, along with several university chapters. And we can, put it on chat, but the top ones that I have is Michigan, Silicon Valley, Southern California, Washington, DC, and San Diego. And those are the professional chapters and several university chapters. And we'll be looking for board of directors. So whether you want to submit yourself or somebody you know who would be capable, interested, please share that with us. And like Piyush said, we have events every weekend. Please stay engaged, take advantage of those, and come collaborate with us, share with us, learn with us. Thank you very much, everybody. So Piyush, we are moving the...
Thanks, everyone.
Vatsla typically closes the events. And Vatsla, are you there?
Yes.
And this is the time when everybody can come on the screen, open networking for those who can for after the recording. And Vatsla typically takes a picture of everybody together. So,
so Mr. Ajay Kothari, I can get you.
And Dr. Ajay Kothari is a very senior aerospace scientist. He is, I won't spill the beans, but we are planning something big with him as well. He was the president of the DC chapter at one point. And like that, we've got a lot of folks who are incognito right now. I would want Amrish Chopra to come up as well. And everybody who can open their cameras, please feel free to network. This session is not being recorded, so we can interact. And and I will have to make a move within 5 minutes to the other session. But great presentations today. I loved the energy, and I think we have a community of engineers who want to be designers, and there are designers who want to be engineers. So let's work together. And one thing which I have to mention in favor of Dr. Kothari is, despite his numerous degrees, he's pursuing another PhD, and he is an artist as well. So more power to him. You can see the paintings behind. So with that, Vatsla, take the last picture, how you want to do it.
Yes, I've taken it. Okay. I'm telling Amrish to start his video. So if you give me 1 second.
So if we get to the gallery view, I think we will be able to. I can see Mr. Saraf as well, and Mr. Madan from SoCal. Mr. Dilip Saraf, for all you know, is #1 coach on LinkedIn. And we've got our new friend Casey from Indonesia, right? Speak up.
Hello, everyone. Oh, I'm from Brunei.
Brunei. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Wonderful. And our community on Clubhouse has really grown in the last 2 months. We are at 435 members today. Yesterday it was 400. I showed that to Vasla. So our activity and the kind of engagement that we are getting beyond the traditional circles that we had in ASCI, it's called going beyond boundaries. And I really appreciate all of you for your content and for engagement. So hoping we all continue. And with that, over to you, Vasla, for closing.
Okay, I do have the picture taken, so we are all good with the closing. Let's just move to Clubhouse from here.
All right.
And thank you so much for being there. Yeah.
Have a
Closing
good
now.
and safe weekend. See you next
Thank
weekend.
you, everyone.